Yeehaw, the real lives of the cowboys. Introduction mention the word cowboy, and a picture quickly comes to mind. A tough man in boots and a hat who is fast with this gun. While this romantic image is known around the world, the real cowboys were very different. Cowboys didn't spend their time rescuing maidens or getting in shootouts. They were workers who performed a tough, dangerous, and exhausting job. It was this difficult, lonely work that first made cowboys icons of the American West. The cowboy era begins in the 1860s. Animals, cattle ranches spread over large areas of western North America. Since so few people lived on the huge plains of Texas, Wyoming, Utah, and Montana, ranchers let their cattle wander over the land. The cows grew fat and healthy on the wild grass, but most of the mayor slaughterhouses and cattle markets were in northern and eastern cities. The ranchers needed some way to round up thousands of cows and take them to road stations to get them to market. Before the railroads spread to the western states, the only way to do this was on horseback. At the same time, many young men had lost their jobs. The US Civil War left soldiers and free slaves with few opportunities. People of Mexican descent and Native Americans were forced west as settlers moved in. Many of these out of work young men went to the western ranches. There was plenty of land and lots of work to be done there. Ranchers hired strong men and taught them to handle horses. They sent them onto the range to round up the cattle and march them to railroad stations on the northern and eastern plains. Leading these cattle drives was the original work of cowboys. More than one quarter of American cowboys were Hispanic, Native American, or African American. The first cowboys were Mexicans who called themselves vaqueros. They were experienced horse handlers who taught the newcomers how to work with cattle and horses. They invented much of the familiar equipment and clothing that cowboys used, including the lasso, the cowboy hat, and leather chaps. Chaps are leg covering that protected cowboys from cactuses and other spiny plants. The vaqueros were often the ones who captured and tamed mustangs or wild horses for other cowboys to ride. Mustangs were nearly impossible to control until after the skilled vaqueros had tamed them. The vaqueros trained both cowboys and horse for the grueling cattle drive. The cattle drive, the roundup. The cowboys' first task was to go out from the ranch house and gather all the cattle for the drive. The ranchers had branded their cattle or burned a pattern into their skin. so they could tell whose cow was whose. This was necessary because the cattle were scattered over miles and mixed in with other herds. The cowboys herded the cattle onto the ranch, sorted them, branded any new calves, and prepared for the long trek ahead. On the trail, about 2,500 cattle and 15 to 20 cowboys went on a typical cattle drive. This included the trail boss, who was the highest paid member of the crew. The trail boss was the leader of the drive. He was responsible for deciding the price of the cattle at the railroad station. The cook, who often served as the driver's doctor, drove a chuck wagon filled with food, supplies, medicine, and other goods. Even though he did not handle cows or horses, the cook was a highly respected member of the crew. He was often African American, a wrangler, usually a teenage boy, kept track of the extra horses. Cowboys needed to switch horses when the horses became tired, sick, or hurt. For the first few days, the cowboys drove the cattle hard, trying to get them away from family and land. The cattle were not used to being in a large group, and they tried to run back to their old pastures. But after a few days, the pace relaxed. Cows were sold by the pound, and going too fast would make them lose weight. New cowboys or greenhorns rode in the back. This was the worst place to be. The cows kicked up lots of dust and left piles of smelly dung behind. Bandanas came in handy, keeping dust and bad smells away from the cowboy's mouth and nose. The trail boss and the cook rode ahead of the herd, searching for the next night's campsite. In the dry west, water sources were very important. The cook and trail boss had to be excellent navigators in order to find them. The cook set up camp and began dinner while the cattle followed behind. In a day's ride, the group could travel 15 to 20 miles. Cowboys often rode 16 hours a day through rain, storms, and terrible heat. The cowboys kept sun and rain off their face. Tough cowboy boots sat comfortably in the stirrups and protected the cowboys' ankles from biting insects. Biting scorpions and snakes. The boots had pointed toes, so if a cowboy fell off his horse, he could slip his foot out of the stirrup before he was trampled. At night, at least two cowboys always stood guard. They even ate dinner in shifts so that someone could always watch the cattle. Guards rode their horses around the herd, making sure no cows ran away. They watched for wild animals such as wolves or coyotes, and for any human thieves or attackers. They often sang quiet, lonesome songs under the stars in order to keep the cows calm. The, the last late night watch would wake the cook, who would begin breakfast, and the drive would move again. Cowboy food wasn't much to crow about, and its supplies had to be cheap and non-perishable. The most common foods are beans, hot cakes, and biscuits, canned, canned fruits, bacon, and strong coffee. Since the cowboys were exercising all day, they ate quite a lot, kept the cook busy. The cook often hunted and fished to add the cowboys' diet. The market. A cattle drive usually lasted 2 to 3 months. 3 months, 7 days a week. At the end of the drive, the cowboys led the cattle through the streets of a railroad town and loaded them on trains bound north and east. Afterward, the cowboys got much needed baths and haircuts. They relaxed in saloons, dance halls, and theaters, and bought more supplies before heading home. The ride back often went much faster than the drive. The cowboys could get good night's sleep under the stars and spend their extra time hunting and fishing. Once back in ranchland, they would begin looking to get hired on the next drive. Stampede, stamped, stampede, and other dangers. Cows are held animals, which means they travel in large groups for protection. Wild-haired animals such as buffalo and wild beasts, they have one defense against predators and other dangers. The stampede. As a group, they run at top speed, trampling everything in their path in hopes of outrunning, hurting, or confusing their predators. Stampede is what a cowboy's biggest fear. While on the trail, the cows were nervous and stressed. A rattlesnake, lightning, or any sudden loud noise could startle the cattle and cause a stampede. Thousands of cattle would run forward at once. The cows moved so quickly that they often hurt or killed themselves by falling off cliffs, drowning in rivers, or catching their legs in holes. Often stampedes happened at night when the cowboys couldn't see the cows or any dangers they might run into. The only way to stop a stampede was by circling the cattle.